Okay, so this is the second video in the series, Stories of the Past, Unlearning the False Narratives. Today, the video starts with a thought experiment. Okay, now, one very common observation that I have had with all the historical textbooks that we have is they always mention ancient history of India, medieval history of India. So, one question to all of these people who are very much supporters of the name that is India is where exactly is this word mentioned? Is it mentioned in any of the Vedas, in the scriptures, in the Smritis, or any of the Vedic literature that we have? We don't find this word anywhere. On the contrary, if I may draw your attention towards one historical anecdote of Christopher Columbus, when he sees the original inhabitants of America for the first time, he calls them Red Indians. So, India basically was the word that was used to give the name to the place where heathens lived. So, the lands where the message of Jesus was yet to be spread was the land that was named India. So, I'll leave it to your better judgment. Do you really connect with the word that is India? All right. So, second chapter in this book, that is History and Culture of the Indian People, written by R.C. Majumdar and many others, is Sources of the Indian History. Now, history, for convenience of understanding, has been divided into three parts: ancient, medieval, and modern. So, for ease of understanding, ancient history is from the most ancient times up until the 12th century, and medieval history is from 13th to 18th, and modern history is from 18th century onwards. So, majority of the sources of the medieval and the modern history are available because they were not really destructed and no deliberate attempts were made to hide and cover the history. So the debate lies in the ancient period, where there is a clear lack of sources available. Okay, so for the ancient period, the sources are majorly literary. That means there is no regular historical chronicle, meaning there is this theory out there that the Vedic people, because we don't know, we can't call them Indians, because during the Vedic era there wasn't exactly a place called India. So there was this absence of any historical text. What I mean when I say absence of any historical text is, we have a lot of Vedic literature where we talk about a lot of sciences, philosophy, and a lot of other things, but we do not have any reference to any specific text that talks about history. Now, that does not mean that we did not have any clear sense of history. Obviously, we had. It was just an oral tradition that was passed on from one generation to another. Secondly, it is more ingrained in our nature that we do not focus much on the past. Remember the theory of karma. And to this very day, many of the individuals, I would say most of the individuals, they stick to the theory of karma. They do not pay much attention towards what happened in the past, because deep down we all realize, and deep down we all understand that whatever that is going on in our lives, it's somehow connected with what we did. It's in direct or indirect relation with our actions. So yes, in the ancient India there wasn't any exact tradition of noting down events, whereas there were traditions of noting down lineage of the kings, how one king from the other, how people from some of the families, they ruled over certain lands. Okay. One contrary example is that, so people say there isn't exactly any historicity in the Vedic literature. One example that proves all of them wrong is there is a preserved list of teachers, as in all the rishis, they are listed in a chronological order. So these were supposed to be the teachers and the proponents of the Vedic philosophy. So yes, we do have some chronological records. Other sources that are left to us are accounts of the foreign travelers who came here for the purpose of studies, for the purpose of whatnot. And majority of these records also have not survived. So all we are left with is some commentaries by some modern authors based on what they think the previous visitors said. All right. Next source of history of the Vedic people is the long list of kings, as in the Puranas, in the epics, that is Mahabharata and all the epics. We have long list of kings. So that isn't exactly history, but it helps. It helps to reconstruct the history of that point in time where we do not have any sources. All right. One very interesting thing that I found out from this book is there is a long list of kings in our epics, that is Mahabharata and Ramayana. Now, one very interesting thing that you guys also will find interesting is the earlier part of the list is considered mythological, whereas the latter part of the list is somehow considered to be historical. So could you really comprehend this? Okay, there is a list that is maintained in the epics, but the starting of the list is supposed to be mythological, but the ending of the list is certainly historical. So yeah, make of that what you will. Next major source of Vedic history is Buddhist and Jain literature. I would really appreciate the Buddhist and Jain traditions that they really actually got down to writing it, documenting history. So there is a very vast repository of canonical literature. Rather, it's not really historical literature, it's more of canonical literature, more about sermons of Buddha and or the Tirthankars. But regardless of all the other shortcomings of their literature, they do provide some value and some order to the history of ancient India. Next source of history for this specific book is the character descriptions of the kings. Now, in the ancient times, what they did was kings, they patronized some of the poets, people who were really good with language, people who were really good with expressing their emotions using language in the form of poetry, prose, and whatnot. So there were court poets and kings. They employed them so they could write about themselves. The poets could write about the kings and their patrons. So there was this one writer that was Ban Bhatt. He wrote Harshcharita. Harshvardhan was a king in the 7th or the 8th century. So from that point forwards, we have many of the character descriptions of the kings. Now that isn't exactly historical, but that does give us some useful information and some context as to what was the situation during that point in time. Now, emerging from that, Kashmir, the state of Jammu and Kashmir that we know it today, there was a historian named Kalhan. He wrote a book called Rajat Rangini. It is the first historical work in true sense of the word that could be said. So there are some parts of this subcontinent whose history is very much clear to us, and one of them is Kashmir, thanks to Rajat Rangini. Even Gujarat, there are some historical anecdotes from the reign of Kumarpal. He was the Chalukya king who ruled over the region that is today Gujarat. So there are biographies available of kings and all the important people that help us to recreate some of the scenarios of the past. One of the other sources are the local chronicles of Nepal. So three regions, Kashmir, Gujarat and Nepal, these three have some of the sources surviving, others not so much. Okay. All right. One of the other sources that we can focus on after the literary sources, that is written sources, is the archaeological sources. Now we have observed this, and we still keep observing that if there is someone from the affluential family and they want to do something to commemorate their ancestors, or they'll build some temples, they'll build some structures around the city. And we have also seen this in ancient India as well. Yeah, for the lack of the better word, ancient India. There wasn't exactly any country named India in the first or second century. All right. um, so archaeology, yes, there are three archaeological sources that we have is inscriptions, coins, and monuments. Inscriptions are very important because all the written literary sources have been deliberately destroyed by the plunderers that have come from the western frontier of Bharat. They have burnt all the evidence that was available, and now we are told that since no evidence is available, that means there wasn't any evidence in the first place. But I'll not get into it, then the things will get political. So, yes, inscriptions from the time of Ashok have survived. That is, I don't know what stroke of luck that was, that everything surrounding it was destroyed, but some of the inscriptions have survived. So, yes, well, that is one of the good source of reconstructing history through useful information. Um, one very one thing that disappointed me from in this book was Samudragupta. He was the founder of the Gupta dynasty, the most opulent and most well established dynasty that this land has ever seen. That is the Gupta dynasty, the golden era of our country. And the founder of that dynasty was Samudragupta, and he is equated with Napoleon. Now, to give you some context and make you realize the absurdity of the epithet that is given to this king, is Napoleon was born in 1769. So we are giving, or we are comparing or drawing parallels between a king that was born in 18th century and a king that was born in way before, centuries before Napoleon was born. So I would say Napoleon is the Samudragupta of Italy. All right. Yeah, many of the inscriptions, some of the inscriptions were funded by the state, that is the government. Other were private inscriptions. So whenever there were some dealings related to land and other resources, those details were engraved on stone, because whatever that is written on paper can be destroyed, but whatever that is engraved on stone, it stays there for eternity. And hence, many of the temples till this day survive. Next source of history is coins. Now, there is a very big problem in relation to coins, because there is no systematic record about what kind of coins were discovered. But in a way, coins or currency is the sovereign right of the state. So yes, each and every king and queen, they have issued their own coins. Sometimes they had their photos on it. And yeah, so one very important thing about coins is that they give us information about the foreign invaders that came here during that time. That was Greeks, Scythians, Parthians. So all these hordes of foreign plunderers, they introduced their own coins. So that helps up to a certain degree to reconstruct the history. All right, and then we come to the medieval period. Obviously, after decimating, annihilating all the sources of history that we had, then came the rulers from the western part of Asia, professing a monotheistic religion, and after destroying all the historical records that we had, they came prepared with their own historians. So for medieval period, we have sufficient amount of documents and sufficient amount of documents with full details, and same is true for the modern period, that is when the Brits and all the other European colonizers came here. So yeah, one very important question about the sources of history in the medieval and modern period is, do we really trust these sources? Because another thing that disappointed me in this book was undue amount of credit is given to Britishers, that they were somehow benevolent and they started, this exploration of unraveling the mysteries of the past on our land. But if according to me, they were just doing it to get some information beforehand, and how they can use that information to manipulate us and consolidate their rule further. So whatever they did wasn't exactly benevolence. There was some selfish interest beneath that. So that's all from chapter number 2 in this book, that is the Vedic age. I'll see you in the next video covering chapter 3.